This episode of Inside Golf Podcast is brought to you by Inside Sports Network.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Boston Capital Turtle Steve on the Hold the Green podcast.
All right, we are live. Tap in, birdie.
All right, Carson Young is here. 8% Lowry at 8K is that's like our favorite play on every slate. Low sevens. I think there's some guys in here we like.
Harris English at 7,300.
Why the fuck would I not bet Rory?
All right, RB, we are live for another Monday edition of our DFS show over at Inside Sports Network. A fairly eventful week for us. There's a couple things I want to talk about as it pertains to Torrey Pines before we dive into the Mexico Open. But how was your weekend? First of all, I'm still recovering from Vegas. And any closing thoughts on Ludwig's, I would say no shots to the RSM Classic, but his breakthrough victory, I would say, in many senses of the word.
Can we victory lap all the dollars we lost on him last time at the Farmers?
People are certainly doing that. I can tell you that much is that liking Ludwig at Torrey the first time is almost as good as liking Ludwig at Torrey the second time.
Wrong week for the bet, wrong week for one and done. But he was super impressive all weekend. Kind of came out of nowhere with that 4 birdie run late. Had kind of been dropped from coverage for a bit, it seemed like, on Sunday, which was a bold decision by CBS, but pretty mediocre week overall, I would say. Finau top 5 really helped out.
Yeah, Tommy top 5.
Yeah, Finau top 5, Finau one and done. So we will take it and move on. But yeah, really impressive by Ludwig. Really impressive by Maverick McNeely, which I'm sure we'll get into. But just a fun week overall, I'd say. Yeah,
absolutely. Touching on Nick's comment first, I can't believe I missed Aberg also. I definitely, we like to spend the first 5 to 15 minutes of the show recapping the prior week and doing some hand up mea culpas. And kind of, I always like to audit and talk about the building strategy ultimately that worked out, what we got right, what we got wrong. Try and spend a lot more time on the what we got wrong than the what we got right. And so, I am absolutely one of the people that loved Ludwig Aberg at Torrey Part 1. Listening back to the Sunday podcast that I did and even our Monday DFS show and hearing what I had to say about the course fit on Ludwig versus, somewhat ignoring him this week. It's tough. It's certainly tough. It's certainly what nightmares are made of. I had a couple of Discord questions specifically on Wednesday night on this exact topic. And I went back and looked and tried to figure out, why did I dislike Ludwig at Torrey Part 2 compared to loving him so much at Torrey Part 1? And RB, I don't know if you have a better answer to this question than I do. I went back and looked at it and was I really don't have a great one, to be honest with you. It really kind of just was an oversight. I can't really, there are a lot of times where I will be happily Vic lapping the process and come out to you with here is the exact reason why I did or did not play this player. And I remember specifically fielding a direct message from one of our subscribers pertaining to the Ludwig Colin debate in at least DFS, forgetting the outright side of it. I don't have a great reason for you other than oversight. I mean, he dropped in my model a little bit, and I think I overvalued the poor form, and it's how much it was correlated to his sickness. I mean, what about you?
Yeah, my excuse is probably even worse in that he drifted later in the week, right? Like
He did. So
I placed
Ludwig, I
bets
think
early.
people caught Ludwig at like 28-1. So an
Yeah.
excuse that the number wasn't even good, that doesn't even exist. I mean, you could
No,
find
not
Ludwig
anymore.
that week at least 25-1.
Yeah, we made a few bets early on the previous Sunday. So, when I bet, Wyndham Clark and Will Zalatoris and Tony Finau. So the card was kind of full in that 50 to 100 range. And yeah, when he drifted to 25, 28, probably should have bought some. Believe I told other people to buy some. So I did not get any.
Yeah. Listen, I will absolutely say this. I am always going to choose our Discord doing well over me doing well, and our community doing well over me doing well. And the amount of Ludwig tickets in our Discord was overwhelming, to say the least. So at least it appears, shout out Nick, shout out Dave, a bunch of our great Discord members in the chat as well that I know hit Ludwig. It seems like there was enough long-term course knowledge on how we feel about Torrey Pines this week and how we felt about Torrey Pines in the past, that the Ludwig hive was at least, shout out Josh as well. Honestly, shout out Natalie for betting Ludwig at 16.5-1 to win the Masters a couple weeks ago. And now he's plus 850 on Bookmaker. You can absolutely Vic lap the CLV there. But yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly pumped for all the Ludwig backers. I think another part of it too for me, RB, was like the underperformance of the range past Rory and Scotty below 30-1, right? And like a lot of that still ended up holding true. Morikawa 14-1. Tough scene, man. Like tough scene. JT a little bit more respectable, but still never really possessed a chance to win. Same thing with Cantlay, a little bit. Like I think that was kind of a respectable bet at 30-1, but nice to see some of the players in that range, I would suppose, at least showing a little bit more life for that tier of the odds board that has underperformed immensely over the start of the season.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, not really contending, but yeah, you mentioned Morikawa still was tied for 17th. Matsuyama still was tied for 13th. JT was 9th. Cantlay was 5th. So not necessarily GPP winners unless you had them with Ludwig and Patrick Rogers or Davis Thompson or something like that. But all showing some signs of life, at least.
What did you make of Rory Scotty? Because I had some opinions on how to play DFS that week, and I kind of want to do a full audit on, because it was one of those weeks for me, dude, where, oh my gosh, we make the jokes about Vic lapping process over results, but 13 of my 18 players in my pool finished top 25, and I barely won money in DraftKings. It was just one of those DraftKings is so hard weeks where I had a 50% 6 of 6 rate with 15 guys making the cut. And I won money in DFS, not much though. I can tell you that. What do you make of how everything shook out in terms of DFS, the building strategy as it pertained to Rory and Scotty, and what you saw from Rory and Scotty this week?
So obviously very surprising considering where we were after 36 holes. I think there's no doubt about that. I personally, I didn't build a single lineup without Scotty in it. So you played
100% Scotty.
Yes. And I stacked Scotty Rory on about 20% of those teams. So I was okay.
And that left you with not a lot of salary. And so you kind of had to guess right in the sixes, but
I guessed wrong in the sixes.
Well, there were enough 6K plays that if you avoided all of the landmines in the sixes, you really could build that beautiful, intriguing Scotty Ludwig lineup. But I actually found, in looking at the lineups that did well in the contests that I played in, there was Kobe's lineup that won 35K I mean, just another incredible week from Kobe and DFS and the Wednesday night ball knower show where you get all of the only place to get all of Kobe's DFS plays. His lineup was, I believe, Ludwig, Cantlay, Finau, Pat
right.
Rogers, something like that. He point being, he did not play Rory or Scotty in that lineup.
Yeah. I think there were a lot of options. I was basically split down the middle. I played a ton of Jake Knapp, just felt like that price was just wrong because he was added to the field late. Played a ton of Kevin Yu. That worked out fine. But then I played Gary Woodland, which a lot of people did. And I played Justin Rose, which some people did. So it's just kind of split down the middle for me.
I played a ton of Denny. I mean, I was very happy to see Denny hang around a lot longer than I thought. DT really killed me over the weekend. We were very heavy on DT, but the thing that I noticed from DFS this week is like Rory Scotty somewhat turned into a little bit of a debate. And I think it was like truly one of the worst weeks for ownership projections I've ever seen across the industry in terms of how that was projected. We said for quite a long time, like Rory is going to be higher owned than Scotty. Like, I do not care that the projections say that the course fit narrative has taken hold to the max this week. And we see how this play, like that's the proudest thing outside of course conditions, which again, we can talk about the rough monsters at Torrey again in the US Open that we saw breaking out. No, it was literally 2024. Like we said, it was one of the easier Torreys that we've seen in recent memory. But the main thing for me was that Rory Scotty was $1,400 more expensive than Rory in DFS. So you couldn't really actually look at them in the same price range, right? Like the difference between Rory and Scotty that week was the difference between Mav McNeely and somebody who was $6,600, right? This was not some like either or decision where they were both in the same price range. And Scotty outperformed Rory, but your ability to build a better Scotty lineup than a Rory lineup is largely dependent on the $1,400 in salary that, you would have to make up for somehow. And there were opportunities to do that in the 6K range. You were just going to have to avoid a lot of landmines. And I think where I kind of netted out is like the nuts was the Ludwig, Cantlay, Finau, Fleetwood lineups, right? Like I think the way that Rory and Scotty finished, it kind of left you with wiggle room on all sides where you could have built that perfect Scotty lineup. You could have built that perfect Rory lineup. But at the end of the day, the reason why I didn't do better in DFS had nothing to do with Scotty and Rory and had everything to do with the fact that I just didn't have Ludwig.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you don't get very many of these weeks where that more balanced build works out, especially in a signature event with Rory and Scotty, especially when Rory and Scotty were essentially 1-2 at the halfway point. So, really surprising weekend, especially from Rory, obviously.
Nick, good call. I didn't realize. I'll have to go back and look on Twitter. The 35K that lineup that Kobe won had Rory in it. I thought it was a Rory. I can effort this behind the scenes because it's on.
He had a couple different ones up there.
He had a couple of different. I mean, it was an absolute nuts week as usual from Kobe. And obviously like a huge shout out to our Discord as well and the weather. I mean, I had a lot to say about the industry narrative about Torrey Pines last week and the over exaggeration potential to what we were going to see at this golf course based on the rough and the conditions that I was seeing based on the amount of time that I've spent at Torrey Pines. And, I think it was a solid overall replacement to the Genesis. I mean, did you have any overarching macro takes on the action that you saw at Torrey Pines over the week as opposed to what we would normally see at Riviera. I think definitely we could all agree on a step down from Riviera, but for the most part, I didn't get to watch a lot of it over the weekend because I was traveling, but I mean, Sunday delivered outside of the coverage, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I think they made the best out of a bad situation. I think you've seen a lot of the same names continue to play really well this year. I'm ready to put Justin Thomas potentially in the world number 4 slot, especially since Xander is hurt. He's now doing it consistently at a number of different golf courses. And then I think as we look ahead to the Florida swing, you've started to see those names pop up. We saw Denny, you saw Daniel Berger pop up again. Andrew Novak played well again. And so I think we have a good sense of what's coming the next few weeks.
Yeah, it was just one of the, I really struggled a lot with deciphering the 8K range, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like deciphering the Henley, Rasmus, McNeely, Dietrich, Finau, Bobby Mack aspect of the board. And I felt like a lot of those players were in tight consideration for me. And I kind of played the fence on a lot of them where I utilized like Bobby Mack miss, a shit ton of Finau, and a shit ton of who else did I play in the
Probably played Rasmus.
No, I didn't play Rasmus, but I bet a ton. Yeah. Anyway, point being is like I kind of got what I deserved this week, where I had a really difficult time deciphering some of the mid-tier 8K range, and like I chose my guys in DFS, and then I bet positionals on the guys that I didn't play in DFS because I wanted some exposure to them. And most of the DFS plays ended up working out. And then most of the positional plays didn't end up working out. And I made a little bit money in DFS and lost a little bit money in the betting markets, and pretty much straight up got what I deserve for that event. So, positional on Maverick top 10, didn't play in DFS, but 2 of the 4 core plays finished top 5, and Tommy Fleetwood and Tony Finau. And, that's when you straddle the fence on a lot of those guys and have some hits and some misses. Anything else on Torrey before we get on the golf course, before we get into Mexico? Do you have anything on Liv or Neiman?
No, I mean, look, he continues to play great. I think he's very clearly the 3rd best player on that tour. And an argument for second, since Bryson is not that consistent. But yeah, Hatton, Rahm, Neiman, they all continue to play really well. And I know that he got at least 2 special invites into majors. I assume he'll probably end up getting into all 4 one way or another. So excited to see more Neiman. He was always great. He's still extremely young. He's about the same age as Ludwig, right? I assume. They got
Neiman's 1 year older than Ludwig. He's 26. Ludwig's 25.
Yeah. So hopefully we get another, 8, 10, 15 years of him, because he's a talent for sure.
He is. I love Neiman. I remember watching him at Riviera in person, following when he was, I want to say he shot there was a 64 or a 63 in there at Riviera from Neiman.
Yeah.
One of those days in 2021 or 2022. And I remember watching the guy and being overwhelmed by his talent. And being, I would still say a massive buyer on Neiman, in the sense that he's still young enough where I don't think we could tremendously hold the major record against him. Past the point of it's time now, you're still young enough to completely change the narrative, but it's time now. I 100% got sucked into a Twitter hole last night with Kobe. When somebody, shout out our guy, Young Cooch, who was the star of our Discord last night. It generated so much incredible content for our community, but my offer still stands on Rory to outperform Neiman at the majors at 2-1. And he wants something closer to 50-1. This is absolutely legendary take. I don't think he's going to respond to it because that's how much of a pussy he is. But somebody actually was like, I will take Rory at 50-1. Like I'll take Rory. You can have Neiman at 50-1 to not earn more money than Neiman in the 4 majors this year. And we're awaiting, which I mean, that's an absurd bet. Like I would take Neiman at 20-1. I would probably take Neiman at 10-1 there. Like the idea of the counter where we're like 2-1 is the most disrespectful number of all time, but 50-1 is like the correct number in terms of where we essentially first started, which the original take was that Neiman was going to be better than Rory at the majors. Our offer still stands. You know where to reach us.
There you go. Yeah, it was a weird thread to follow, but I like Neiman. Very bullish on Rory at these major venues this year, though.
I am certainly bullish on Rory at the major venues as well. Maybe not to win, but I would be fairly shocked if Rory does not find himself in the mix and at least earns more money at the majors overall than Neiman this year. I don't think that that's a crazy take to suggest by any means. Okay, let's shift gears to Mexico. I just wrote an article on the site. I wrote 3,000 words on my thoughts on Mexico. I did not record a Sunday pod. There's going to be a couple times a year where I don't record a Sunday pod, and I'm always fascinated to see where the industry goes and what narrative develops on this golf course when I sit one out from the sidelines and essentially just give the information directly to the Discord subscribers. But give me your overarching thoughts on Mexico this week. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What's your take on the golf course? Do you think long players can play well here?
Yeah, I definitely don't. I don't overthink these events, specifically this golf course, just because, yes, we've seen driving distance and just overall sort of off the tee game be very important here. You saw it with Knapp and with Valimaki last year. They both sort of bomb and spray. And you can do that here. Pretty wide fairways. Everyone's going to be hitting plenty of fairways, but also not a lot of rough. So yeah, just kind of bombs away for me. I think Mayo's been pushing the Torrey Pines comp a little bit. Not necessarily the guys who played last week, but the guys who played at Farmers. So yes, I think you'll see a lot of crossover between that leaderboard and what we see this week in Mexico.
The DraftKings pricing, I love events like this personally. I think that there is going to end up being a stronger reliance on data in these weeks when you do not have clear options at the top of the board that everybody knows and is familiar with their skill set. And there's more of an opportunity to trust the numbers and identify some hidden gems that may not be the most popular names in terms of consensus plays that we know about these guys and we know what type of skill set they have. How would you assess the 9K plus range this week in Mexico, RB?
I think it's another week where pricing is pretty soft. I think you can do a lot of different things here. I think nothing really surprising. I assume Maverick McNeely would have been over 11K if he was here. And so
Mav WD. Did you get your bets in before the Mav WD?
I did, but you kind of knew he was going to WD.
Kyle can certainly Vic lap that one. He was very high on the Mav WD.
Yeah, Mitchell dropped out last night. I mean, honestly, wouldn't be surprised to see somebody like Akshay also drop out. But he might still need the points. So
there are a couple guys, RB. I don't know if you noticed this. Do you know that Patrick Rogers and Sam Stevens are both playing their 7th week in a row?
Yeah, I think I'm surprised with Stevens because I thought he would have been in other events, but I guess you have to keep in that swing 5 or A on top 10.
I was going to say, my best counter to Stevens is like, if you're Sam Stevens, you play the Mexico Open.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he could be the second favorite this week, and I wouldn't have batted an eye. Like he's perfect for this golf course, playing great. So yeah, he's got to play. Where's Andy Novak is the question.
I don't know. It may just be a natural rest spot for him, and he's racking up. If we just played Torrey Pines every week, then Andrew Novak would be a pretty wealthy man. So, I understand Novak had a great Sunday as well, and he might just be taking the natural rest spot Carl, I saw Taylor Moore just roaming around the lobby of the Wynn in Las Vegas this weekend. I said this in the Discord. Like, I did a complete double take. I was like, is that Taylor Moore? And he's either Taylor Moore's long lost twin. I'm like 99.9% sure that was Taylor Moore on Saturday at the Wynn. I don't really, can he win Mexico while have spending the prior weekend in Las Vegas? Sure. Like
Sure.
I'm not like saying it's negative by any means. But neither a red state or a blue state. Yeah, we're gonna have to run some models on the political climate and demographics of Mexico before we make a final decision on more this week. At the top for me, RB, and I guess I will start with like Batia, Kitayama, Hojgaard, Stevens. I think Kitayama is still, to me, the best option in my personal opinion. He didn't play Tori last week, which I actually think is a positive. Although somebody like Hojgaard, Rasmus, at least, I wouldn't put a ton of stock. Rasmus shot 80 in brutal conditions, and then never really had a shot to make the cut. I'm 100% willing to forgive him for this, and I think it's a great course for Rasmus for all intents and purposes. I continue to believe that Kurt Kitayama is the best ball striker in this field. And I think that would probably be my lean at the top of the board as it stands here on Monday. Obviously, a lot is going to change over the next 3 days, which is the value of the Discord, obviously. But I think for me, Kitayama is my favorite 9K plus.
Yeah, I could see it. I don't really have an argument against him other than maybe Akshay is just playing a little better right now. I've already mentioned Stevens. I do love him. Probably will not be going back to Patrick Rogers. Feels like an obvious letdown spot. But playing great, has 3 straight top 10s at this golf course. So, wouldn't be surprised to see it. But I think when you're splitting hairs up here, I think it's a letdown spot for him. And same with Steven Yeager, who, again, played okay last week. Ball was fine, putted terribly. So maybe that's a reason to buy in here. He's played well at this golf course all 3 years. But I would say I'm probably lowest on Rogers and Yeager, highest on Akshay and Sam Stevens.
Dave, it's not like hemorrhaging money on Kitayama. Kitayama is a guy that my numbers definitely like more than market. I'm not sure if I'm going to bet him this week. I'm not even sure if I'm going to end up playing him in DFS. We'll see where the ownership goes. But the value of the Monday show is just to break down the board, not from an ownership standpoint, but from a numerical standpoint. And Kitayama is I will 100% stand by Kitayama being my favorite option in this range. I actually think that Stevens and Rogers is like, those are the 7-week guys. Those are the 7 weekers. And so I may consider a blind fade on the 7 weekers. I somewhat agree with you, Mike, that Rogers, actually Aaron Rye, core play last week, who made the cut, but didn't really do anything over the weekend. I would say Rogers, Rye, and Hall are probably my least favorite in this range. I'm pretty open to Akshay, Kitayama, Hojgaard, Yeager. Mike Kim too. What do you think about Mike Kim 92?
Feels like you're buying high, but he is one of the few guys up here that seems to have like real spike weeks. He has like multiple top 5s, top 3s every year. It is interesting, Aaron Rye being number 7 in pricing here, but best world ranking in this field. It's interesting. I do remember that because it was the same thing when Matt Wallace won at Corrales. It was like the same situation where he was like the best player in the OWGR, but he was like 40-1, something like that. So I do like Aaron Rye just in general, just don't think it's a great golf course for him.
Kyle sighting. Who do you think is the highest owned in this range? Like if you had to give I run my first ownership, which generally seeing the industry projections, I think is becoming one of the most valuable things that we do at Inside Sports Network. So I will have, you know, I will state my case on Tuesday where I see all of these guys coming in. But if you had to give an early projection at ownership, what do you think the popular build is? Like, what do you think people are going to look at this pricing and say what?
So I think people are going to play Patrick Rogers more than anybody else in this range. I could see an argument for Taylor Moore with the recent form, and he's at the very bottom of this 9K range. So you could easily play Rogers and Moore as your starting point, and you can grab Knapp. I mean, he's obviously going to be popular too. So I would say most builds will be 2 above 9K and at least 1 8K, and then we'll go from there.
Do you think anyone gets over 30%? Like, how do people react to Akshay as the highest price player on the slate? Like,
well, he's still low. Yeah, he's still low, I think. Yes, I think a couple of these guys will push 30 just because a lot of the popular bets this week are like right at 7K or low sevens. And so you can see people grab a couple from their betting card, grab Jake Knapp, can still get like Akshay and Stevens in there. So like you can literally play anybody you want this week.
Yeah. Data Golf does love Rasmus. Mike, I get it. I love Rasmus too. Rasmus is like third or fourth in my numbers as well. Bhatia, Rasmus start from Nick. I certainly don't hate that, although I would probably lean Kitayama Rasmus over Bhatia Rasmus personally. Let's move down a little bit and talk about the 8s. Dissect this range for me. Starting with our guy BG at 8.9 all the way down to, God, I was like gearing up for Grayson Sig to be a core play this week at 7.2. What do they know? Like, I cannot believe Grayson Sig is 8K this week. I was super excited to fire up. Yeah.
He's had some higher finishes this year, like he was always a guy who didn't show much upside, but he's shown a little bit this year, but still, way too expensive for him. So, I mean, I think very clearly you can just split this range in half. And I think the top half of this is going to get hammered and the bottom half is not. Obviously, a lot of people betting Smalley and Knapp this week. Kevin Yu has been tremendous. I think he's a great course fit as well, maybe a little bit expensive. And then people just love Ben Griffin. They love to play him a lot. They watch his TikTok content.
I'm guilty.
So, I would say Knapp and Smalley feel like the two that are going to be the highest owned, but I think Griffin and Yu will be owned. I don't expect a lot for Lauer, Pan, Olesen, Sig, Fox, etc.
Agreed. And I actually think that there is some opportunity in this range. Like, I am I'm just going to say right now, I am way lower on Jake Knapp this week than consent. Did you bet Knapp? Are you?
I did. I just felt like the 50 was wrong. Like he should have been 25-1 in this field.
Sure. Yeah. I don't think so, but I get people who do. I mean, I see the course fit. Obviously, he's the defending champion. I actually think there's going to be some interesting opportunity on. I do think Smalley gets the model love, right? Like, I think that most people are going to be able to understand that like Smalley's history on Past Palm Resort golf courses is incredibly hard to ignore. And if you're plugging in any of those comps in terms of Diamante and Corrales, Punta Cana, he is a former 6 at this golf course. It's going to spit out Alex Smalley for you. I think there's some decent opportunity on Lauer, Pan, and Nikolai. Although I do think Nikolai is going to get a fair amount of steam as the cheaper Hojgaard. I bet Nikolai I bet Nikolai at 55-1. And if you are making me guess right now, I would say the 3 highest owned in this range are Nikolai, Knapp, and Smalley.
Yes, I think that's probably correct. So my favorite, I would say, GPP play in here, who just missed the betting card, was CT Pan. And I didn't really have a good reason not to bet him other than I looked at his odds here from last year where he finished 3rd. He's essentially the same golfer and has been for many, many years. Do you know what his odds were at Mexico last year?
No.
250-1.
Yeah.
And he's like 45. So that just scared me off because I just obviously buying at the peak. So, But I do love CT Pan this week. I think he makes a lot of sense.
I agree with you. I like CT Pan as well. How do we navigate Norgard being 8.4K? Kyle is shook. We need an official statement on Kyle about whether he's going back to his Prince Norgard at 8,400. And I want to say 35 to 1 in the betting markets, 35, 40 to 1. Johnny Newman, I agree with you. I was confused to see. I mean, I understand the course fit and the buy on the talent. Like, if you think driver putter is the roadmap this week, then Norgard is going to make a lot of sense. But it's not like he's going to be this giant model darling, because a lot of his best stuff is coming from the DP World Tour. Like, it's basically just Kyle being and a lot of people like you who follow the DP World Tour being absolute Norgard truthers. Do you think he's priced correctly at 8.4K, or should this be more? I mean, my price that I made him is more like, I thought he'd be 78, 77.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is, again, buying high on the talent. I don't think he's super overpriced. Like, I think he's a step above like the low sevens. So yeah, I agree with you. If he was like 500 cheaper, 600 cheaper, I think he would be in play this week.
You think 8.4 is a solid price on the talent, Kyle? You could respond in the chat. I was very curious to hear what you had to say about Norgard 8.4K this week. Camden throws out, and this can transition us into the sevens. I love Jesper Svensson this week as well as a Euro bomber. I was even surprised to see him at 7.6 RB. Like, I thought Jesper Svensson was going to be 7.2 or 7.1. But how would you assess the beefy 7K range? Yeah, golf tips checker. I'm so glad that you're in here, because I haven't been able to spend as much time online this morning. But gosh, if there's a lot of Jesper Svensson steam this week, that's very discouraging to hear. I agree with you, Nick. I was shocked to see Jesper Svensson at 60 to 1. I thought we were going to get like an 80 or 100 on Jesper Svensson.
Yeah, I think again the top 10 at Sony is going to hurt him for a while, until we figure out exactly what he is. But again, proven winner on the DP World Tour. Really, really good off the tee, really long off the tee. So again, if that's what you're looking for, and he is a pretty good putter also, the West Coast swing notwithstanding. Yeah, I think he's a great course fit here. I'm not there this week. Just I went with some guys who were in the 100 range instead. But yeah, very good course fit for Svensson.
So talk us through some of your favorites between 7 and 7.9. We've got a lot of ISN guys here. Yeah. Carson Young, bona fide ISN guy. We will get the report on how Carson Young is feeling in, what may be one of the best Carson Young golf courses for him all year. He's finished 8th and 15th here in 2 appearances. Nobody loves a wide open Pass Palm Resort golf course like our man Carson Young. We already touched on Jesper Svensson, but just a lot of guys we love. Patty Fish. Yep. I'm a big Thor guy. You're a huge Ryan Gerard guy. I like EVR a lot this week. How would you assess the 7K range?
Yeah, so most of my plays are going to be below 75. But yeah, Ryan Gerard.
Gigi, by the way, is in this range.
Yeah.
A huge ISN guy. Kyle has been yelling about Gigi in Mexico since the start of time.
So yeah, I think the couple that I'll highlight, everyone seems to have already caught on to the Vincent Norman thing. I think he's a great player.
RB, why is he 100 to 1? He hasn't had I bet Vinny Norms at 110 to 1 too. He literally has not had a top 10 on any golf tour since the end of 2020.
You gotta open the third eye and just see the signs coming.
I have the third eye. He pops for me in my numbers. But what edge do my numbers have if DraftKings is also seeing that a guy that literally has not had a top 10 in a year and a half should be 100 to 1 instead of 300 to 1, like his results would suggest?
When you win, right? He's got that bump of being a 2-time winner, right? He won the Barbasol, won the Irish Open. But yeah, really good off the tee. The ball striking's still been pretty good. Like I mean, both round to round and tournament to tournament. And he hasn't missed a cut in 2025. Like, again, yeah, the upside hasn't been there. He hasn't even had a top 25, but he's made all 4 cuts this calendar year. And yeah, I did look back at him also. He was like 40 to 1 here last year. And I think he missed the cut on the number. But the other 2 guys who I bet a bunch down here, but the other 2 guys that I'll talk about, one is Chris Ventura. So
good. We got a question in the chat from Stat ATL on Chris Ventura.
Yeah,
speak on it.
He was part of that, and I tweeted about it about an hour ago. He was on that vaunted Oklahoma State team. He was a senior in like 2017, 2018 with Hovland, Matt Wolf, Austin Eckroat, Sam Stevens. Like, that team was very good. And he was one of the best players on that team. He won twice on the Korn Ferry Tour in 2019. I assume he was the points leader, may have been second, but he didn't really adjust to the PGA Tour that well. Went back to the Korn Ferry Tour for a couple of years. He got his card back last year, but proven winner, really long off the tee, pretty good putter. Flies the Norwegian flag because he spent 6 years there, but he was born and raised in Mexico.
Did not know that. It's a good grab there.
Yeah, there are some family vibes here. His dad's Mexican and mom is Norwegian. So, and again, finished 4th at the Farmers. So, yeah, it was heavy short game, but if we're making those comps, he's 100 to 1. Just makes a lot of sense here. And then also looking back at that same Farmers leaderboard, Ricky Castillo.
Yeah, I was looking at him as well. I was looking at both Castillo and Celinda.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Castillo, he's done it. Well, I should say they both won on the Korn Ferry Tour last year. I like the ball striking for Castillo a little bit better.
Is it Castillo? Like,
yeah, he adds a syllable. It's Castillo. It's very weird because it's spelled like Castillo.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, he really, really good ball striker. I was making jokes all off season because he's legitimately has been one of the worst putters I've ever seen. He potentially has fixed that because his putting has not been quite as bad, and he actually gained at Torrey at the Farmers, which was shocking to see. But yeah, once again, just buying low on the talent at 100 to 1. Big fan of him this week.
Just a couple guys in the chat I want to get to if you had any thoughts on them. Rosner from Nick, Griot from Mike, and then I was curious, and then Charlie Hoffman as well.
Yeah, I did bet Rosner also at 90 to 1. Just felt like it was a really strong number for a guy who is, again, a proven winner, albeit on the DP World Tour. He's won 4 times. He just finished 4th in Qatar. Just another open, exposed, windy. You just got to bomb it.
There's a lot of there's like a lot of sneaky. I mean, this is what the Discord is great for, and this is why we hired Steve. But there's like a lot of sneaky past Palm golf courses on the DP World Tour. Like some of the golf courses that like Rasmus has played great on in the DP World Tour are like sneakily past Palm golf courses. For what it's worth, Marcus Simone is past Palm from tee to green.
Yeah. And like, I don't think he's necessarily priced wrong or anything, but like the data golf rankings have him above Grayson Sigg and above Carson Young. So it's possible that he's a little bit underpriced there, but yeah, again, I just like, he's got, not to steal any trademarks, but he's got the dog in him, I would say. So yeah, it just feels like there's a lot of upside there. And I don't think he's going to be owned or bet very much this week.
Who do you think's the most popular in this range? Like Potagigi, maybe. That could be an ISN bubble situation, but we saw what happens when the bubble grows.
Yeah. So again, I think it's going to be spread out because there's a ton of value this week. But if you're just sort of filtering by distance and sort of long term, like I think models will still like Patrick Fishburne. Yeah. I think people will play Svensson, like you mentioned. I think Vincent Norman will get played. I think Joe Highsmith is still popping in some models. I think Data Golf liked him a little bit. He seems to have 0 form right now, but still really good ball striking. So, but yeah, I don't think anyone here is getting above 20%. So I wouldn't worry about it. Agreed.
And it's been fairly spread out in the 7K range to open the season, right? Like even I think the chalky options last week, like Wyndham Clark was 12.5%, as we projected, right? Like
Yeah.
we haven't seen yet any disgusting 17% players in the 7K range. And I certainly don't think that we're going to see it in Mexico this week when you have a full field and a
Yeah.
pretty beefy 7K range. But I have no idea. Like I have learned not to even remotely underestimate the industry narrative that could take hold this week at a golf course like this, where it seems like there's a pretty clear consensus on there being a preferred path to victory this week, be it via powerful driving and specifically long iron play as well. Finish off in the Gummy range. We got gosh, we got some guys down here. I'll tell you my favorites, but why don't we go you first?
Yeah, so there's a few. I'm going to lead up to my favorite. So I'm not going to say Sammy Valimaki because I think people are there between what he did last year and what he just did at Farmers. So I think the first one to go back to is going to be Hayden Springer. He finished 6th at Torrey and then very disappointedly missed the cut at Phoenix.
A lot of Springer love in the Discord this morning.
He thrives in these environments. Like you give him like a Sanderson Farms or a Puerto Rico or a Rocket Mortgage or a Q School, right? Like that's his jam. So he finished like tied for 40th here last year. So nothing great, but made the cut. Ball striking was really good. And I was talking to Ryan French Monday Q Info, and he just said Springer just said he's playing really well. So I'll take that. So that's enough for me. One other guy who I don't necessarily love the course fit here, but I just play him these weeks, Chad Ramey. He just shows up at this stuff.
Another Passpal merchant.
Right? Passpal merchant. He's won on tour at least once, maybe twice, but he just shows up, probably more of a first round leader type of guy, and then he'll fade to like tied for 28th or something. But he's in Gummy consideration. But my favorite this week, and I've already started spreading the word on it. I don't really know why, but I feel very good about Will Gordon this week.
Me too.
One
of my favorites
back from injuries.
Had him starred. One of my favorites in this range. He's played well here in the past. He's a top 25 finish in his only appearance. He finished 7th at Torrey Pines. I don't know if I'm as in on the Torrey comp as others this week, although I see what people are going for there. But hard to ignore the fact that he did finish 7th at Torrey Pines on a very driver-heavy, long iron intensive golf course.
Yeah, for sure. So again, coming back from an injury, I think it was a wrist injury, but I could be completely wrong there. And then he made 4 or 6 cuts in the fall as he was coming back, and he's made his last 3 cuts. And yeah, like you mentioned, tied for 7th at Torrey. It was really, really good to see, including a closing 69 on the South course in those really tough conditions. So yeah, really, really like Will Gordon this week. He might be more than Gummy consideration. He might be long shot consideration this week.
Love that. Let's hit our Jose Luis Ballester quota just to make Kyle happy. 450 to 1. What is he? 6.4.
Yeah. I think some people will play him again. He'll be 1%. Maybe 1.5%, but yeah, U.S. Open champ, Arizona State. People just want to be early on these guys now, which I totally get. I'll give you one better. 6,500, Justin Hastings, another amateur from Australia.
Wow.
Actually, sorry, might be New Zealand. Might be New Zealand. But so he just won the Latin American Championship last month to get a Masters invite. So just a name to watch if you're playing 150 lineups and you want to sprinkle some. And he just finished 2nd in the Southwestern Invitational Amateur. So 1st and 2nd, his last 2 events, playing in the Masters, 6,500.
Yeah, we will monitor. We're big on the youth at ISN. Do you think I'm getting over my skis on Phillips? I think Phillips is like actually good.
Probably the best player who came off the Korn Ferry Tour. But again,
Phillips is sick.
He's coming off an injury though, and he hasn't played in a few months. So, but yeah, monitor closely, because if he shows anything, he's going to be 60 to 1, 50 to 1 in these fields very, very quickly.
Yeah, Phillips is, I think Phillips has the most. Would you say it's fair to say that Phillips long-term over Solinda and Castillo? Solinda went to Stanford too.
Yes, he did. Yeah. So I mean, this class in general, I think is like we already saw Matt McCarty win. We've seen Frankie Saps play really well, but yeah, I think Carl Phillips is probably the clear best player in this class.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, man. Okay, any other closing thoughts for you before we get out of here on Mexico? Who's your winner?
Will Gordon. Let's do it.
To win the tournament?
I think he can. I bet him 151. Let's do it.
I'm gonna go with this could change, but I'll give you one guy that I bet already. I'm gonna go with the other the other Hoshgard. I'm gonna go with Nikolai 55 to 1 on FanDuel.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I think
that's
we're getting a long shot this week for sure. Something, yeah. I think something over 50 to 1 is hitting this week.
You think we're getting a long shot? Yeah, I mean, if you look past at the Mexico Open over the last 3 years, Rahm and Finau were both tournament favorites, and then you had Knapp. I believe Knapp was 45 to 1. Were you on Knapp last year? I know a lot.
I was, yeah.
I was not on Knapp last year.
Yeah, I was on him here. It was the first win of the year because remember there were all the sort of long shot West Coast, and no one had really hit an outright until Mexico. So
right. Okay, we are at like 3 or 4 subscribers on YouTube away from hitting 1,000. There are close to 1,200 people that are live watching this video on YouTube. I say this very seriously. Like we got 1K. Just received word that we got 1K.
Beautiful.
Okay, that's no reason to stop though. I mean, you know, seriously, like we put out the most content in the space on a given golf tournament on YouTube. Like we literally have 7 shows a week on YouTube. The Sunday pod won't be there on YouTube forever. But we have 2 excellent podcasts every single week from Twitterless Steve and Capper at Hold the Green. That was a very specific and important hire for me because first of all, there's going to be some weeks when I travel. This week was one of those. And, you know, the fact that I can not do my Sunday podcast some weeks and know that Steve is going to bring a top-notch course breakdown for us every Sunday night and like really get in the weeds on the narrative, the agronomy, the type of skill set that matters. They just do a really excellent job, you know, every Sunday night breaking down the golf course. We have that on Tuesday nights. Obviously we have Tap and Birdie. Obviously we have this Monday DFS show. You know, the Wednesday one is becoming the cult favorite. That's like the one show that we put behind the paywall. Yeah. But for us to continue to put out all of this free YouTube content, if you're watching and you don't want to subscribe to Inside Sports Network, it would mean the world if you would subscribe on YouTube, because that will, I mean, that will cause us to continue to prioritize free content on YouTube. It's like, if we see that there's a real avenue for us to grow on YouTube and put out a ton of free stuff versus just seeing that our best responses are to the stuff from the Discord that we put behind the paywall, it makes a huge difference for us. So if you have 5 minutes this afternoon and you want to tell a friend, a family member, a loose relative to subscribe to our YouTube channel, that stuff means the world to us as well. Okay, buddy. I got nothing else. We'll be firing in the Discord as always. I have a podcast coming out later this evening that I recorded early this morning with Tony Finau's former agent. That gets very deep on the Tony Finau situation.
Can't wait.
It's there's some good stuff in there, and Dieter Esch is you know, he owned Wilhelmina Models and like represented Beyonce for many years, and he told an interesting Beyonce story, and he's got a ton. I mean, he breaks down what really happened with the Kuchar caddy situation. He is just the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to storytelling. So check out that podcast on this YouTube channel. later this evening. And thanks again, RB. Cheers.
All right, man. Have a good week.